sustainability has to be sustainable, if that makes sense from an economic point of view. So it's great to try to push it from a regulation point of view. However, a business that is sustainable need also to be profitable and to make sense for the customers. So great, you want to manufacture a smartphone in France. If the smartphone costs 5,000, no one is going to buy it from you. So it is sustainable. It's not never going to be profitable. However, I see businesses are doing sustainable stuff and also being profitable and having an appeal to clients. And I think this is where everything needs to go, which is you embed into your operations, but still it makes sense.
Welcome to Sustainability Transformations podcast, where we discuss bold ideas to drive positive change for people, community, and business. And today, I'm so pleased. Our guest is Tristan Pelloux, who is the founder of Fintech Review and Strategwhy, a business strategist and fintech advisor who brings a fresh perspective to innovation across finance, entrepreneurship, and sustainability. And the key goal of our discussion in sustainability is to see the innovation trends in fintech and how that is so essential for sustainability. So welcome, Tristan. You wear many hats, from fintech media to boardrooms to strategy consulting. What connects all the dots in your career so far?
Thanks for having me, Enock. What connects the dots? That's a good question. So, I mean, I used to work in banking, and more precisely, I was working in business strategy and corporate finance, but focused on financial services. So this is when I discovered fintech, and that's how I started Fintech Review. I wanted to, share my thoughts about the industry, cool technologies are reshaping banking and financial services. But my job is strategy. So basically, you have like the industry expertise, fintech, and then the more the functional expertise around strategy. And then in strategy, as you said, I do advisory consulting, so do research. I do PhD research in strategy. What interests me, and obviously this is going to be the discussion, but how we link strategy to innovation and how we can find ways to better implement strategy that delivers better outcomes, including, launching innovative products, innovative services. Also, like a core thing for me is how can all of this can drive outcome for clients, customers, but also for the world more generally.
When you are delivering the innovation consulting for companies, how do you juggle, or when they are sourcing your activities where they see you as a strategist but not as a fintech review or the other aspect? How does that conversation come about for new clients?
Yeah, I mean, usually, unless they're in the fintech sector, I don't even mention fintech review. I mean, well, first as a start, I separate my week and I kind of put like compartments between activities. And so when it's fintech review, I will have discussions with companies about content, about exposure, kind of selling like advertising services and like content creation. So it's a bit different from when I talk to companies about strategy, and then the core is going to be business strategy. And the fact that I have experience in fintech and exposure to that is interesting usually, but I always try to explain to people that whatever the sector, business strategy is always the same or in approach to innovation at a conceptual level. So that's why I worked in various sectors, and it can be manufacturing, it can be SaaS, it can be fintech, whatever. You can be selling potatoes. The core of strategy is, okay, what are you selling? Who are you selling it to? Is the way you're manufacturing or selling your services an innovation? Is it not? What is radical innovation, true innovation, incremental? But this can be in any sector. It doesn't have to be. I had this discussion this morning about someone was asking me, do I have experience in legal tech? I was saying no, but I'm pretty sure that it's going to be always the same. It's like, as I said, who are you selling it to? What are you selling? What's the price point? What is your industry, your market looking like? This you can replicate to whatever sector.
Yeah, I'm a big believer of once you have the methodology or the model, then the model, yes, you adapt it to the industry, but the fundamentals from what you described, the model of application will be the same. So how did the FinTech review come about? At what gap were you trying to fill inside the market?
So it started because, as I said, I was working in strategy and innovation, in London, and I was creating like internal content. Yeah, I added like a newsletter internally, like and stuff like this. Then I thought, why not having a personal blog? Initially, I thought, I'm gonna write on LinkedIn, and then I thought, no, you know what? Let's try to build a platform outside, not inside the platform, but just like properly outside. It started as a personal blog where I was just writing about fintech and it was fun. And then over the time, it evolved because, well, kind of people reached out and say, hey, do you do interviews? And I thought, well, actually, it could be it. So started doing interviews. I started opening up to like other people writing. And then from there, it PR publications and other stuff. And it evolved into being an actual, news media platform. It's been 5 years and kind of the growth and the path has been, well, seizing opportunities that were coming up and then also trying to see where I can take it. And now I have a clearer vision. Initially, it didn't start as a business. It started as I'm going to write about what I think about the industry, and now I take a very different view on this.
Yeah, now I'm so pleased because I'm on day zero in the sustainability. And so I'm so pleased that, you said 5 years. And I think the core part is you seem to be at the start, enjoyed it, and then you allowed in time to then give you the clarity of what the journey is. So it's so nice to see. So what have you learned about the evolution of fintech by curating so many expert voices?
Yeah, I mean, just to add, yeah, as you say, it's a long game. Whatever content you're producing, is it a newsletter, a blog, a podcast? When I started this thing, which is I read, are you ready to do 100 or 200, newsletter or blog posts? If you're not, then you're never going to establish anything. So you always have to think uh, about it, and that most podcasts or like whatever, they become like really good after sticking with it. So for me, I've seen the evolution, of course, like in 5 years from the ups and downs of crypto and like the influence on fintech. And for me, technologies, they come and go. So there was lots of focus on blockchain. Now all the focus is on AI, but it creates a bit of noise always. But I always take the view, because I'm also a strategist, as we've said. So it starts with a business problem, or it starts from the business, and then you go to the technology, which can be whatever. But it always starts with, okay, what are you trying to do here? And then you're going to find the solution. So I've seen various technologies come and go, trends. Lots of fintech businesses have grown and have become quite important. Stripe, PayPal, Revolut have become quite big players. At the same time, many companies that still haven't figured out the right business model because they got lots of funding. There was lots of funding going into fintech companies without really figuring out, okay, is this a business that can generate revenues and profits for like to be sustainable in the sense, viable. But yeah, no, it's been interesting. And now a big wave of AI, which creates a lot of noise, but the discussion is more about automation and how can you not replace humans, augment their capabilities so that they don't spend time on useless tasks and much more on actually adding value.
Yeah, that's good. With the blockchain, I'm curious because I remember maybe 15 years ago, thereabout, where there was the evolution from DVDs into there was like a Blu-ray that came up, and then Netflix came up, and then all of a sudden, I'm not a tech person, but I didn't hear about Blu-ray anymore. So I'm curious to know from a blockchain. I bought a few blockchain books 5 years ago, which I didn't really go into, but it was on my list of catching up. And then all of a sudden it's AI. So I'm curious to know what's the key distinction between the blockchain and AI?
These are very different things, but just, I mean, there are plenty of technologies that you use in business. And usually people, if you're a CEO, if you're a business person, you usually don't care about like what kind of technology exactly is being used. You care about, hey, I have clients, I need to deliver them the service or product. So these two technologies have come here like in the business world, and people get excited and try to understand. But for me, they should go back to like a technology discussion. But like the blockchain is a distributed database that in to summarize, right? And it's exciting because it's in theory immutable. So it brings some efficiencies in certain areas. And then on top of that, people have built cryptocurrencies, which are using blockchain as a technology. Is it revolutionary? I mean, for now, yes. But as I said, maybe 5 years from now, there's something better. And it's useless, as you were saying. But there was a DVDs, there were Blu-rays, awesome, and then streaming, and then who cares about DVDs and Blu-rays? So there will be always. That's why I said the important is to focus on the problem, and then the solution can be whatever. Sometimes it's not even a technology solution. That's why there's lots of noise with AI, and people say, "Hey, let's use AI to do this." And most of the time, it's like, "Yeah, we don't need AI. You need like a simple automation or not even." But for me, it's always going back to, okay, what are you trying to do here? And then they can be whatever. And right now, maybe the solution is blockchain, maybe the solution is AI, maybe it's nothing. And in 10 years, it will be something else that hasn't been invented yet. And that's a normal flow.
Yeah, that's very good. Starting from what the problem is or what the customer really wants or needs. Again, if you choose the right word between the wants and the needs and the problem that needs to be solved, seem to be a very good point to start. So, what major fintech trends are catching your attention right now, Tristan?
I think, I mean, AI obviously, and how businesses leverage it, the regulatory pushback or approach to this, because as you automate and give the keys to a system without like human intervention or with little human intervention, it is okay in certain aspects. You do marketing and you publish on social media, fine. For credit decision, for managing people's money, the more you have automation, the more I think regulators are nervous, governments are nervous about this. So I think it's an interesting trend, and I'm looking forward to see how it shapes up. And then generally, I think what we call embedded finance and embedded payments. So, Klarna or all this kind of stuff or when you take a Uber and you don't see the payment because it's already inside the journey, you've already given your details. So this is when finance and payments become invisible. It's an interesting trend, and it's been shaping up over the past few years. So you don't have this friction of like getting your card out. And the more and more, I think you will see more complex stuff being embedded in the customer journey. Because actually, when you buy something, you don't care about paying for it. You care about buying it and getting it. And so you go on, you buy a flight, you buy whatever. You actually don't want to go through the process of like, putting your card's detail or whatever. So this is an interesting trend, and more it's becoming invisible in some journeys as a customer, and I think it will become uh, eventually more the case. So this is an interesting trend for me. And then last one, they said, I think the industry has matured now, and so it's to see the businesses that will survive. There will be a bit of consolidation in the sense not everybody can make money in the market, and then eventually one buys the other. Uh, and you can see this happening when there is less funding available. Then the businesses that stay are the businesses that are more solid because they can generate money without external funding, and they will be able to buy the other ones. So this is also something that interests me.
That's interesting. So, the last part, is it safe to say that is about the growth potential? It will get to a peak where some of the businesses within the banking and finance industry or payments industry cannot grow to the expectations of investors or shareholders. And if it cannot grow, like most things in life, anything which is not growing is dying. It cannot be both at the same time. So is it safe to say, because the expectation of business is growing from time to time, if it's not growing, it becomes stagnant, then that's where naturally some business may fall off. Is that a good elaboration of what the last part means from what you said?
Yeah, exactly. In 2021 was a peak in terms of funding for fintech businesses. Then since then it got down, got down, got down, and now it's stabilized. As you say, it's all based on expectations. I'm giving money to that business because it's growing, expecting it to reach a certain value. And then eventually, a few years down the line, in most cases, you realize it doesn't reach that value. And then investors kind of readjust their expectations at the market level, at the sector level. Hey, payments companies, yeah, let's put lots of money. And then you realize, oh, actually, no, the market is not growing or whatever. So it's always this game of you try to predict the future, the future doesn't realize in a different manner. And then you adjust. And we're seeing this adjustment now. Some businesses have grown faster than others, and new opportunities, and others where, for me, for instance, one segment where I've never understood because I don't think there's that much money, which is everything to do with personal banking. Your personal bank account, that in itself, like all the neobanks, that in itself, there's not so much money. There's money at the moment of selling products like a credit card, mortgage, but just having your money in some place, the business that manage your money, we're not making anything out of it. And then lots of companies popped up and started like, hey, I'm a neobank. Yeah, come with me. And I was like, sure, but your guys are too many of this segment, and there's not enough money to be made from the customers you're looking for. But it's a process, and we're getting out of it now. It's positive anyway. This kind of change in the market because everybody steps back and say, okay, let's chill. Actually, there's no value here. Let's move on.
So if the market banking is getting saturated, where what is the one or two areas that are having emerging innovations in the payment? I know you mentioned about the Revolut, business, but I'm curious in general, where has the growth potential in innovations to deliver a more sustainable financial system based on the challenges and the possible trends you've mentioned?
I think that a few companies are well placed. The payments companies are, the Stripe. Stripe, for instance, is quite well placed, which is a competitor to Stripe. Everybody that is doing payments, like embedded payments, what I mentioned, they are powering a lot of businesses. As again, to that point, if a business says, hey, I want a solution to make my payments invisible, then you have this guys providing a solution. So because there's a business demand for finance to become invisible, then the guys that are playing in that field are going to win and are going to grow. So this is one area where I see continuous demand because business are demanding this. And then more generally, business solutions. So financial services for small businesses, small, medium businesses, financing, lending. I think there are opportunities here. However, it is hard. It is much harder to play in the small and medium enterprise segment than in the personal segment because personal it's easier to understand because the needs are a bit more homogenized, so between people. Whereas businesses, by nature, two businesses will be quite different, and so they will have different needs, and so it's a segment that is quite complicated to tackle. And what we've seen is lots of fintech companies launching to go after personal, after individual, because it's easier to target than small businesses, even those are millions. But I see value here, but it's harder. It's harder to do.
Yeah, that's good. So, what does strategic transformation look like today, especially for legacy industries like the financial services?
Trying to The problem what many old companies have is that they're sitting on lots of legacy technology that they eventually need to upgrade and change. But it's not that easy. I could see lots of banking CEOs saying, hey, let's use AI, but then it's all a mess. They don't have the data organized, they don't have anything organized. Transformation, the issue is sometimes it's technology, but most of the time when you do a business transformation, the problem are the people. Because in the sense, you have a business of 10,000 people. These 10,000 people have all the jobs, they're doing certain tasks. I'm doing marketing, I'm doing sales. If you're trying to change your business from a technology perspective, completely reshaping it, it means looking at the people, what they do, looking at the processes, looking at the tools that they use, looking at exactly what they do day to day. And this is much harder, to figure out how to reorganize this. And at the same time, trying to convince the people internally that it's a good change and that they're willing to do that change. So that's the biggest challenge when you do a transformation. The technology is readily available. Tomorrow you can deploy AI in your business. You just go and play around with ChatGPT. You can access the API and you can plug in your business the ChatGPT models and use it. But first, what are you trying to do? And then secondly, you need to figure out the processes, what people are doing. For me, that's always, but it's also what I find quite interesting from a strategy perspective. It's not so much about the technology, it's about like how you organize your business. What is your vision for that future business? How do you go from where you are now to where you want to be in 3 years? What are the steps that you're going to take in order to change your business, implement these new technologies to deliver better products and services, be more efficient?
Yeah. No, I'm so pleased you've mentioned about the core challenge of the people because in my space of sustainability, where I do strategy, is something which I've discovered lately. In fact, I've got a host of those change the culture, you change the game, which I've been reading within the sustainability space from a strategy point of view. So it's always nice to know that in a separate industry of business transformation, that is an issue. So it's not just peculiar to sustainability, where lots of companies have beautiful 100-page reporting and it shows that the culture aspect, the behavior, and there's lots of research which show the knowledge. You can give as much knowledge as possible, as you mentioned. The big companies can bring transformation at a bigger scale, and that transformation with AI, but you still need the behavior because people have done it and habits. So what mistakes do companies still make when trying to innovate without reinventing their core?
I think what the biggest mistake people make when it comes to innovation um, is thinking that it's about the idea. And this I see times and times again, which is, hey, I'm going to have a great idea and it's going to be innovative. You can have whatever idea today, doesn't mean that it's going to get you like the right outcomes or going to transform in a business or product. What matters is the implementation, is execution. How do you go from idea to business, which is, so for me, this is the issue with innovation. People saying, "Oh, well, let's generate ideas and let's test ideas." I'm like, fine, but these ideas will be worthless. What matters is your ability to go from idea to execution very well, and that's where if you see businesses that we deem to be good at innovation, what they're really good at is that ability, not so much to generate ideas, but just to take an idea and execute it better than everybody else. I'm a visiting professor and I teach innovation. And I always take the example of Apple as a business, which is they haven't invented anything, but of course, everybody's saying as a startup they did. But the iPad wasn't the first tablet. The iPhone wasn't the first smartphone, but they took an idea and executed much better than anybody else. Then you obviously have external factors, but the thing is, it's always about your ability to execute that idea. And I see many businesses not being good at. Why? Because they don't have a structured way to do it. They will go from the management will define a strategy for the business. They will say, let's do innovation. People will come up with it or even come up with ideas. And then how do you push that to the business is messy. And probably I would say my estimate, maybe 20% of the business do it well. The rest are doing it more or less efficiently, and some are doing it very, very badly.
Yeah, I've always been very keen on innovation because there is a lot of lessons I say innovation has been around longer than sustainability. And so, since innovation has been around, the common challenges that innovation faces, sustainability can learn from. I'm not saying every single one of them, but in sustainability, we suffer with those. We have an idea, and sometimes the challenge with the idea is to look good for customers, to look good for investors. And the idea is not actually to implement it. Yes, to implement it, but some companies get the results or the appearance of wanting to do sustainability. And that level of achievement may be enough to not actually, deliver the 95%. So just announcing that we have this idea, we want to be more sustainable. They may get a lot of awards or may get a lot of appraisals. Again, sharing why there is a lot to learn from innovation, from what you've discussed, for the purpose of our discussion. So you're running multiple ventures. What systems or mindsets help you manage them? You mentioned about the compartmentalization of your time, but how do you balance that strategic clarity with entrepreneurial curiosity?
I think that you need to be, very clear about the vision for, if you're going for one business, and you need to be clear about what do you want to do with it, like where do you want to take it. An exercise that I do for myself, and I tend to tell people the same, which is, okay, 1 year from now, it's been very successful. What have you done? Where are you with this, project, business, personal life? So this is what I try to do for each of the things that I do, if I go into something. And I also try to put myself some milestones, in order to know at which point I will reevaluate. So this is kind of the strategic direction that I need for clarity. Or do I take a fintech review, or do I take my consulting advisory? Balanced against what do I want to do? What do I like to do now? What is likely that I will want to do in a year, 3 years, 5 years? Kind of mixing this as a filter to, do I want to do advisory in 5 years? Maybe, maybe not. Do I want to manage a media business? For now, yeah, it's fun. Will it be fun in a year? Will it be fun when you've scaled it? And trying to take all this into account. And then day to day, as I said, I'm very organized. So because it's also my nature, like it's what I advise people about execution. So I need to be good at this. So I always know what are the priorities in different areas. That's allows me to do many things at the same time. I know, like, I have a list of 200 things that I need to do. It's actually a bit more than 200. And then it will be split by different, areas and projects. And I know at what point do I need to do what thing, what will take time, what do I need to activate now to get results in a week, what do I need to, different deadlines. And on this, I have the layer of, okay, this brings more money, this brings less money, this is long term, but I need to activate it now. So I try to have these different filters in place in my head. But for instance, I start every day looking at, what do I need to do now? What is, upcoming week? How do I reorganize? What do I push? What do I prioritize? But I always start like this. And also, like, one thing that obviously maybe is obvious, but I spend a lot of time, lots of hours. The days are long. There's no way, like, if you want to build many things, uh, and also I feel I want to build things now so that 5 years from now I have to work less, but you need to spend a lot of time at some point. There is no way around it.
Yeah, that's amazing with the overall view, but also the micro view of the weekly planning. So you sit on boards and advise founders. What are the big blind spot leaders often miss around sustainable growth?
What are the issues with founders? I mean, when you eliminate already the ones that think the idea is the important thing, and understand. Actually, it's about the execution. Then a lot of the time I see businesses being too niche in the sense they're in a small market and they don't realize it. They think their market is big, but actually it's not. Um, and so, taking a bigger picture or going after something else, that's one thing. And then people that try to do it too complicated. So trying to launch something that is too many things at the same time, so they lose focus. So the secret is trying to be somewhere in the middle, not going into like a market that is so small that you're never going to make money in the sense that your business is never going to be profitable to reach a certain scale. And people that want to launch something, 5 different products. And so I'm like, look, just go for one in that market and try to establish before building up something a bit bigger. So this view of trying to scale. I mean, it's great you want to scale very fast, but one step at a time. Launch something, get some clients, get some revenues. Awesome. Validate. And then you go and you build instead of trying to go full on because you will eventually fail. But yeah, I mean, I meet lots of founders that have great ideas. The problem is getting this idea into a business and not realizing what does it take. I think the successful entrepreneurs also realize quickly that they can't do everything themselves and that they need to bring in the right people and rely on externals. I always advise, I mean, if you can, co-founder is always as a complementary skills is always a good idea. And then I always advise if you don't need external funding, don't get external funding because it will come with strings attached, as in they will tell you what to do or to take your business. Maybe they will influence you and not tell you, but still, if you really don't need to, just don't do it because it's not free money.
Yeah, someone told me the easy way to be in that position of not needing external funding is to speak to customers and grow as quick as you can. Perhaps is one way. I know it's probably not your area, but is there a growing appetite in fintech for ESG, climate innovation, or ethical fintech? Out of curiosity.
Actually, I got more and more involved in that space since helping on COP, uh, the COP 2 years ago. And then last year, I worked on an initiative called the Banking Coalition for the Green Economy. So there is growing appetite. There is more to be done, especially in the way you link funding and ESG projects, in the sense that helping people that have capital better invest it into ESG projects, understanding the peculiarities around carbon footprint, around like looking at the project in a different way than a traditional project. I think that here, so there's plenty of things to do. Of course, there is a bit of setback right now with the current administration in the US that is pushing back on a lot of initiatives that were in motion. However, for me, it's just a tiny bump in the sense. First, in Europe, well, there is no like going back, and the economies are turning into sustainability anyway. I think for me, sustainability has to be sustainable, if that makes sense from an economic point of view. So it's great to try to push it from a regulation point of view. However, a business that is sustainable need also to be profitable and to make sense for the customers. So great, you want to manufacture a smartphone in France. If the smartphone costs 5,000, no one is going to buy it from you. So it is sustainable. It's not never going to be profitable. However, I see businesses are doing sustainable stuff and also being profitable and having an appeal to clients. And I think this is where everything needs to go, which is you embed into your operations, but still it makes sense. Maybe it can't be like everything right now, but over time you build and then you develop a different supply chain if it's a product, and then it's fine, but I think we're getting there. After the first wave of sustainability at all costs, I mean, awesome, but customers don't want it. It's sustainable and also you're not paying a lot more or, it makes sense from a business point of view.
We need to look at the definition of sustainable. Maybe we have to change because if sustainable can mean economically sustainable, environmentally sustainable, people sustainable, then why should we separate it? We have to discuss and bring all, if you look at it on one side in a different room, but you go to a different room, you talk about the different aspects, then it's no way to help bring all of these discussions in a room. So, and there's a lot of companies, as you mentioned, have succeeded, like the Tesla, where they've looked at, a high-end market. Maybe over time they can come in. There are alternative burgers which are plant-based, but when you taste it, it's not the same as the meat-based, but you wouldn't know the difference. And so a lot of customers are buying it and they find it's still sustainable as well. So yeah, there's huge opportunities for a lot of these sustainable companies, impact-based companies to explore. So what is your final thoughts based on all the discussions we've had for business leaders that need key transformation around using tech or data-led innovation? What is your final thought for these key categories?
So my final thought and advice is forget about the technology. Think about the problem you're trying to solve. And then you will explore a range of solutions, but don't start with the solution because then you're losing focus. Start about the business problem, your idea, and then focus on the implementation. Don't get, too cocky about your idea. In your head, maybe it's great, but actually, it's probably not great. So fine, talk to people about it. You don't have to be secretive. What matters is what you do with your idea. So someone will steal your idea. Who cares if you're better at executing your idea? So that's to focus on that. And for people that already have a business and, already executing, look at the way you are doing strategy execution. So strategy implementation. Try to find a framework that you like and to be better at going from your strategy to pushing to your teams and making sure there is a good alignment here. So this would be my advice to people.
Huge thank you to Tristan for giving us your incredible time and the insights. I've learned a lot from a sustainability point of view. It's giving me a lot of confidence in some of the challenges, which from a strategy point of view, as I mentioned, there is a lot of crossovers that we can learn from innovation, but I'm sure the listeners from founders to established businesses. So if listeners want to find more of your work, Tristan, can you tell us where to find more of your work?
On LinkedIn is probably the central point where from there you will see stuff that I do in strategy and research on OKRs, and as well you can link back into the stuff I do with Fintech Review.
That's great. All right. Thank you so much, Tristan.
Thanks for having me.